Ryan Gosling had always relished the moments when he could slip through a crowd unnoticed. Despite his fame, he prided himself on maintaining a sense of normalcy. That crisp morning, he pulled into the supermarket parking lot wearing a simple gray hoodie and faded jeans. The place seemed ordinary. Shopping carts rattling, people juggling grocery lists, parents guiding restless children. It should have been just another mundane task in a busy day. But fate had other plans. Not far from the main entrance, nestled behind a pillar, sat a homeless man in a threadbare coat. He was in his mid-50s, hair streaked with grime and white from age. His weathered face told of innumerable nights sleeping on concrete. Next to him lay a dog, skinny and spotted, eyes alert yet weary. The cardboard sign propped against the man's knees read, "Please help me and my friend." Occasionally, someone dropped a coin or a bill in the battered coffee cup by his feet, though most strolled by, entirely absorbed in their own worlds. Ryan closed his car door gently, taking a moment to scan the parking lot. He spotted the homeless man right away. Perhaps it was something in the man's tired posture or the dog's watchful gaze that drew his attention. He considered approaching with a few dollars or an encouraging word. But the parking lot was busy, and Ryan hesitated, not wanting to attract a curious crowd. Instead, he decided he would pick up a few extra groceries inside and quietly hand them over on his way out. Yet, as Ryan headed toward the automatic doors, a thunderous roar shattered the air. A motorcycle engine revved so loudly it turned every head. The biker cut the ignition abruptly, leaving a jarring silence in its wake. Ryan, hand hovering near the front pocket of his hoodie, watched with growing apprehension. The biker swung off the machine, leather jacket creaking with the motion. He stood tall, his stance aggressive, scanning the scene like a hawk searching for prey. A few shoppers paused, uncertain whether to keep moving or watch. There was something menacing in the man's gaze. He removed his helmet, revealing a closely shaved head and a deep scowl. A dusty bandana was wrapped around his neck, and the heavy boots on his feet clacked ominously across the concrete as he strode forward. Ryan made a move to step aside, blending with the onlookers, but he sensed the biker's direction of travel and grew uneasy. The man was heading straight for the homeless fellow and his dog. Even from a distance, Ryan could read the tension in the air, feel the way it thickened like a slow-building storm. The homeless man noticed the biker just a heartbeat too late. The dog, however, picked up on the aggression almost immediately, letting out a low, uncertain growl. The biker stopped a few feet away, glaring down at the pair as if they were trespassers on his personal property. "Well, look what we have here," the biker muttered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Some old bum with his mangy mutt? You two having a picnic on the pavement?" The homeless man swallowed, eyes lowering. He clutched the cardboard sign, his knuckles whitening. The dog's ears pinned back, but it refused to retreat behind its owner. It stood between the biker's boots and the man's trembling legs, as if to shield him. Ryan, still a short distance off, looked around, hoping someone else might step in. Nearby, a few observers tried to avert their eyes. No one wanted to be part of an ugly confrontation. Ryan exhaled, heart tightening with the weight of responsibility. He didn't relish confrontation, but every fiber of his being told him the situation was spiraling in a dangerous direction. "You're scaring my dog," the homeless man managed to say, voice quivering. It wasn't exactly a protest, more a broken plea. He gently patted the animal's flank, as though begging it to stay calm. The biker snorted. "A dog, huh?" He took one step closer, and the dog responded with another growl. "Better watch its tone. Teach it some manners before it learns them the hard way." Ryan could see the man's shoulders tense, his grip on that flimsy cardboard sign trembling. A wave of compassion surged in Ryan's chest. He moved forward, weaving past a couple who were pushing a cart full of groceries. They looked uneasy, and one of them half whispered, "Should we call security?" But no one reached for their phone. The biker lifted his foot, making a feinting motion as if he might kick the dog. The dog recoiled, hackles raised, a desperate bark escaping its throat. The homeless man yelped, eyes brimming with both fear and desperation. "Get away from him!" Ryan's voice came out sharper than he intended, slicing through the tension. A few people turned to see who had spoken. When Ryan stepped into the open, his face recognizable even under the hood, a ripple of surprise passed through the small crowd. Some whispered his name, others held their breaths. The biker swiveled around, and for a second confusion flashed across his hardened features. He looked Ryan up and down, then let out a bitter laugh. "Isn't this something?" he spat. "Ryan Gosling, right here in the parking lot. Never thought I'd get a celebrity cameo in my day." Ryan forced himself to remain calm. "I'm not here to be a cameo," he said, voice steady but firm. "I just want you to leave him and his dog alone." A small circle began to form, onlookers inching closer despite their apprehension. The homeless man watched silently, his eyes darting between Ryan and the biker, still clutching his dog protectively. The biker cocked his head, sneering. "What are you going to do? Offer me an autograph in exchange for walking away? Maybe a selfie for my feed?" He stepped forward, angling his body so that his imposing frame towered over Ryan's lean figure. "Let me guess. You think you're some kind of hero." The tension radiating from the biker was almost tangible, like a vibrating wire about to snap. Ryan felt a trickle of sweat forming at his temple. His mind raced. He wasn't a trained fighter, nor was he armed. However, he couldn't stand idle while someone threatened a homeless man and a defenseless animal. "I'm just asking you to stop," Ryan repeated, keeping his voice low. "This doesn't need to go any further." "Oh, I think it does," the biker snarled, stepping sideways to keep the homeless man in his peripheral vision. "You see, nobody tells me what to do, least of all some actor who's playing at being a good Samaritan." Behind them, the automatic doors to the supermarket slid open, and a security guard emerged, alerted by a concerned shopper. He wore a standard uniform, but the way he approached, warily glancing between Ryan and the biker, made it clear he wasn't trained for high-risk confrontations. Ryan half-turned, noticing the guard. He hoped the added presence might deter the biker's hostility, but the guard seemed unsure of himself. The biker followed Ryan's gaze, smirking as if he'd gained a sudden advantage. He shifted his stance, letting out a derisive chuckle. "All of you, back off," the biker demanded, raising his voice so it echoed through the parking lot. He glared at the guard, who hesitated. Then he pointed a finger at Ryan, eyes alight with scorn. "And you, don't you go telling me how to live my life. You don't know a damn thing about me." Ryan inhaled slowly, trying to quell his own rising adrenaline. He could feel the weight of the crowd's expectations pressing in, but more importantly, he saw the terrified look in the homeless man's eyes. The dog whined softly, each tense moment dragging out like hours. "No," Ryan said quietly. "I don't know you, but I can see what you're doing, and it's not right." For a moment, the biker stared, rage twisting his features. The tension in the air felt like a drawn bowstring, poised to snap at any second. Ryan braced himself, the beat of his heart thudding like a drum in his chest. Whatever happened next could spiral beyond anyone's control. In that fleeting pause, all sounds seemed distant. The hum of nearby traffic, the rustle of a shopping cart's wheels. Even the security guard stood rooted to the spot, uncertain. Everyone waited for the biker's next move. Ryan looked from the biker to the frightened dog, then back again. If words failed here, if he couldn't somehow defuse this situation, things could get violent fast. His gaze flickered to the homeless man whose lips trembled as though he were whispering a silent prayer. And then, the biker tightened his grip on his helmet and edged closer, malice etched into the lines of his face. It was clear he wasn't finished. He wanted to prove a point, to show that no one, celebrity or otherwise, could hold him back. In the hush of that parking lot, Ryan felt the pivot of fate. A single wrong move, a single spark of aggression, and everything might explode into chaos. As Ryan squared his shoulders, he realized that sometimes, standing up for what's right requires stepping into danger without knowing the outcome. In that moment, he promised himself he would do whatever it took to protect the homeless man and his dog, no matter the risk. Ryan's heart pounded against his ribs, each beat echoing with the realization of what stood before him. The biker's gaze flickered over Ryan's shoulder to the small gathering of onlookers, some filming on their phones, others peering anxiously from behind shopping carts. The homeless man remained curled on the ground, his dog pressed protectively against his chest. For a moment, a hush fell across the parking lot, as though the world was holding its breath for what might come next. The security guard took a hesitant step forward, clearing his throat in an attempt at authority. "Sir," he began, his voice wavering, "I need you to lower your voice and step back. Don't tell me what to do," the biker snarled, turning just enough to shoot the guard a scathing glare. His fingers flexed around the helmet in his hand. The veins in his neck bulged with pent-up rage, and Ryan noticed the faint smell of alcohol in the air. Ryan swallowed, maintaining his stance. He knew that one wrong word could escalate this into physical violence. "Nobody wants a fight," he said, trying to keep his voice steady but soothing. "Just let him be. Hurting that man or his dog won't solve whatever you're dealing with." For a second, a flicker of uncertainty crossed the biker's eyes like a candle flame sputtering against a draft. But then he exhaled, anger flaring brighter than before. "Easy for you to say," he scoffed, "standing there with your perfect life. You show up, a big celebrity, and think you can play savior?" Ryan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He wasn't here for accolades or attention. He just couldn't stomach bullying. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the homeless man lift his head, hope warring with fear. The dog let out a small whimper, pressing closer to its owner's side. The biker pivoted, turning his full attention back to the trembling pair on the pavement. "You know what? Maybe I'll teach this mutt a lesson. Maybe then people will understand not to get in my way." He lifted his arm, the helmet in hand, as if threatening to bring it down on the dog. A few witnesses let out gasps. Someone shouted for him to stop. Ryan felt a rush of adrenaline flood through him. Before he had time to think, his instincts kicked in. He lunged forward, grabbing the biker's raised arm. The sudden movement startled the man who tried to jerk free. For a split second, they were locked in place. Ryan's fingers digging into the leather sleeve, the biker straining to swing his makeshift weapon. "Don't!" Ryan forced the word through gritted teeth, his pulse thundering in his ears. The biker managed to twist out of Ryan's hold, sending Ryan staggering back a couple of feet. Some of the onlookers cried out, inching backward from the scuffle. The homeless man instinctively covered his dog with his body, as though shielding it from a coming storm. Glaring, the biker raised his helmet again. His eyes blazed with an unfocused fury, like a wounded animal that felt cornered. The security guard hovered uselessly, radio crackling at his hip. He pressed a button, muttering a call for backup, but his voice trembled so much that Ryan doubted help would arrive in time. Sucking in a breath, Ryan adjusted his stance. He wasn't a martial artist, but he'd had enough training for various film roles to know a few defensive maneuvers. He just prayed he wouldn't have to use them. "Back off," Ryan said quietly, drawing the biker's attention away from the dog again. "No one wants this to get worse." The biker paused, glaring at Ryan. "You keep saying that, but you keep stepping in my way. Makes me think you do want to fight." Ryan let out a slow breath. "I want you to walk away, that's all." An uneasy hush settled over the group of spectators. The homeless man looked between Ryan and the biker with wide eyes, his dog pressing so close that its fur was matted against his tattered coat. Each passing second felt like an hour. Ryan's thoughts spun. Was there a way to defuse this without anyone getting hurt? Suddenly, a shout came from behind the cluster of onlookers. "Police are on their way!" A woman, standing on her toes, waved her cell phone in the air. Whether she had truly called them or was bluffing, Ryan wasn't sure. But the effect was immediate. The biker's eyes flickered with panic. He drew his helmet to his side, clutched it under his arm, and turned his gaze briefly to his motorcycle. Ryan could practically hear the wheels spinning in the biker's mind. If he stayed, he'd risk arrest. If he fled, he might salvage some pride. Biting his lip, the biker spat at the ground near Ryan's feet. "You're all pathetic," he muttered, turning away from the homeless man. Despite the insult, Ryan felt a wash of relief. Perhaps it was over. But as the biker took a step toward his motorcycle, his frustration flared anew. He pivoted back, pointing a finger at the homeless man. "If I see you here again," he began, leaving the threat unspoken. The dog gave another low growl, as though challenging him to do worse. Ryan remained perfectly still, ready to intervene if the biker lunged again. The tension clawed at the air, seconds feeling like hours. Finally, the biker tugged on his helmet and swung one leg over the bike's seat. The motorcycle roared to life, vibrating angrily. Then, with a squeal of tires, he peeled out of the parking lot, leaving a trail of burnt rubber and shaken nerves in his wake. A collective exhale swept through the crowd, as if everyone had been holding their breath. The security guard stepped forward, radio still clutched in his sweaty hand. Is everyone all right?" he asked, his voice betraying relief that the confrontation had ended without an actual brawl. Ryan blinked, then nodded. He quickly turned to the homeless man, kneeling to his level. A closer look at the man revealed the hollowness of his cheeks, the trembling in his hands. The dog's ribs were visible beneath its patchy coat, yet it still tried to look tough, baring its teeth at any hint of danger. "Are you okay?" Ryan asked gently, pressing a hand to the man's shoulder. I think so," the homeless man murmured. His eyes shone with unshed tears. "He didn't hurt us." Ryan glanced at the dog, reaching out slowly to let it sniff his fingers. The animal's tail gave a tentative wag, as though it sensed Ryan meant no harm. "That's good to hear. That was brave," he added, his gaze moving from the dog to its owner. The man offered a shaky smile. "He's my best friend. I have to protect him. But thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stepped in." Ryan took a moment to catch his own breath. He could feel adrenaline still coursing through him, but the immediate danger had passed. He scanned the crowd. Several people were quietly dispersing, though a few lingered, clearly curious. Some recognized Ryan's face, others simply recognized his compassion. The woman who had shouted earlier about the police approached tentatively. "You did the right thing," she said softly. "I really did call the cops. They said they're on their way." Ryan nodded, patting the homeless man on the back. "Good. Stay here until they show up, okay? You can explain what happened." The man gazed at Ryan, eyes full of gratitude and exhaustion. His dog licked at his chin, a small act of comfort. "I will," he whispered, his voice raw. Ryan wished he could do more. His mind already raced ahead. Could he help the dog get medical care or the man find a shelter? It felt overwhelming, but he knew he couldn't simply walk away from this. Not now. Standing, Ryan looked around for the security guard, who seemed to be fidgeting with his radio. The guard caught Ryan's eye, giving a slight nod of acknowledgement, though it was clear he was relieved the biker was gone. Together, they would wait for the authorities. Yet, Ryan sensed this was only the beginning. A single confrontation might have been avoided, but the homeless man's struggles ran far deeper than one clash in a parking lot. And the biker's fury, intense enough to threaten a vulnerable stranger, hinted at a darkness that could resurface at any time. Stepping aside, Ryan exhaled slowly. As the police sirens wailed in the distance, he realized he was willing to help, no matter how complicated it might become. The day had started with a simple errand, but it had transformed into a moment of reckoning, one that could spark a series of events far beyond this supermarket. Ryan Gosling stood off to the side of the supermarket parking lot, heart still pounding as red and blue lights flickered across the asphalt. 2 patrol cars had arrived, and uniformed officers were now speaking in low tones to the security guard. The previously rowdy crowd had dispersed, leaving only a handful of onlookers who lingered out of concern or curiosity. The homeless man, still trembling, gathered his tattered coat around his frail body. His dog rested its muzzle on his knee, panting quietly after the chaos. Ryan approached slowly, crouching down to meet the man's eye. "Do you need medical attention?" Ryan asked softly. He noticed a small scrape on the man's arm and a fresh bruise that was already darkening along his wrist, likely from shielding himself and the dog earlier. The man shook his head. "I'm okay," he whispered, though his voice trembled. I've had worse. Really, I'm just glad he's gone." His gaze flicked anxiously to the spot where the biker had revved away moments before. Ryan placed a gentle hand on the man's shoulder. "I know the police will want a statement. If you need me to talk to them on your behalf, I can do that." The dog lifted its head, ears perking up at Ryan's calm tone. Its tail thumped once against the concrete, a fragile sign of trust. The man's eyes shone with gratitude. "Thank you. I never expected. People rarely stop to help us." Ryan exhaled, recalling how many bystanders had looked the other way until the confrontation turned dangerous. "It's not right," he said, voice tight. "I'm just sorry it got so tense." A young officer approached with measured steps. She glanced at Ryan, doing a double-take as recognition lit her face. In another context, she might have asked for a photo or an autograph, but now her professional demeanor kept her focused. "Sir," she said to the homeless man, "could you tell me what happened? Were you harmed in any way?" He swallowed, casting a nervous glance at Ryan. With a small nod of encouragement from Ryan, the man spoke up. "That biker, he wanted to kick my dog. He was angry, said we didn't belong here." A pause. If Ryan hadn't stepped in, I don't know what would have happened. The officer jotted down notes on her notepad. "All right, and your name is?" "Alvin," the man replied, voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, scribbling. "Thank you, Alvin. Do you feel safe remaining here, or do you have somewhere you can go?" At that, Alvin's features clouded with uncertainty. He looked down, scratching the dog behind its ear. "Nowhere. We've been on the streets for a while." Ryan glanced at the officer, then back at Alvin. "If it's okay, I'd like to help him find a safe place for the night." Relief touched the officer's face. "That would be great. We can arrange for a ride to a shelter, or if you have other ideas, that's even better. Just let me know if you need any assistance." Ryan offered a faint smile. "I'll see what I can do." Moments later, the officer thanked them both and headed back toward her partner, leaving Ryan and Alvin in a subdued hush. The dog eyed Ryan curiously, as if trying to gauge whether this stranger could truly change their fortune. "I know a couple of local shelters," Ryan said carefully, running a hand through his hair. "But some don't allow pets." Alvin's shoulders tensed and he hugged the dog closer. "He's the only family I have left. I won't go anywhere that turns him away." Ryan nodded, understanding the unbreakable bond between them. "Let me see what I can do." He tapped his phone, stepping aside to make a call. While it rang, he caught sight of the small group of spectators who were still staring in his direction. Some wore expressions of awe, others of respect. He offered them a polite nod and turned away to focus on the phone conversation. After a few minutes, Ryan disconnected the call and walked back, kneeling beside Alvin again. "I might have a lead. A friend of mine volunteers at a rescue organization nearby. Sometimes they help with pets whose owners are in tough spots." Alvin's eyes lit up, though caution still lingered. "Really? Do you think they'd—" "I think they'll do their best. Let's head that way now. If it doesn't work out, I'll figure out something else." A tear escaped the corner of Alvin's eye. I don't know how to repay you." Ryan shook his head, placing a reassuring hand over Alvin's. "You don't have to. Everyone needs help sometimes." He offered to drive them, but Alvin looked at his dog nervously. The animal trembled at the prospect of going anywhere unfamiliar, but with gentle coaxing, it followed. An officer escorted them to Ryan's car, ensuring that if the biker returned, Alvin would remain safe until they left. The drive itself was short but felt momentous for Alvin and his dog, like a voyage into the unknown. Ryan kept his tone comforting, asking soft questions about how the pair ended up here. Alvin's voice was uneven, recounting a series of misfortunes, a job lost, a sudden eviction, and then an illness that depleted his savings. Through it all, the dog remained at his side, often their only source of warmth on cold nights. When they finally arrived at the rescue organization's modest building, Ryan exhaled in relief. A close friend, Laura, greeted them at the entrance. She recognized Ryan at once but focused on Alvin and the dog, her eyes filling with empathy. "We'll get both of you settled," she promised, ushering them inside. The dog's tail wagged uncertainly, sniffing the air. Alvin's cheeks flushed with gratitude and he kept glancing back at Ryan as though afraid any moment might break this kindness. Ryan lingered by the doorway while Laura spoke to Alvin in hushed tones. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and beyond the reception area, row after row of kennels housed animals waiting for homes. The smell of disinfectant hung in the air, but there was a warmth and compassion among the staff that gave the place an air of hope. At last, Alvin turned, his dog pressed close to his side. "They said I can stay in a small guest room until I figure out my next move," Alvin explained, voice thick with emotion. "They'll give him a checkup, make sure he's healthy, and they'll let us stay together." Ryan couldn't help but smile. "That's wonderful," he said, feeling an unexpected weight lift from his chest. Seeing Alvin and his dog in a safer environment brought a sense of calm that had been missing since the confrontation. A few minutes later, Alvin was led down a hallway, guided by a staff member who carried a blanket and some dog supplies. He paused to look back at Ryan. "I don't know if you believe in fate or not," he called quietly, "but it feels like you were meant to be there today." Ryan swallowed, remembering the tension, the threats, and the dog's trembling bark. "Sometimes the universe puts us in the right place at the right time," he said, offering a gentle nod. "I'm just glad I could help." When Alvin and the dog disappeared into the corridor, Ryan turned back to Laura. She gave him a knowing smile. "You did a good thing," she said. "Not everyone would step in, and a lot of people wouldn't go this far to find a real solution." Ryan rubbed the back of his neck, feeling a mix of humility and relief. "It's the least I can do. We all deserve a second chance." Outside, dusk was settling, painting the sky in muted purples and blues. The chaos of the day seemed distant now, replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. As Ryan walked to his car, he thought about how a single act of aggression in a mundane parking lot could change so many lives, and how a single act of kindness could change them back. He slid into the driver's seat, closing the door softly. The memory of Alvin's worn face and the dog's scared eyes lingered in his mind. Today, he realized, hadn't just been about stepping into a fight. It had been about seeing someone who was invisible to the world and offering a helping hand. Shaking off the tension in his shoulders, Ryan started the engine. Sometimes, in a world that often rushes past those who need help most, all it takes is one moment of courage to rewrite a person's story. And as he drove away, he felt certain that for Alvin and his loyal companion, this was only the beginning of something better, proof that even in the darkest of corners, there can still be a light.